welcome. This is Preeti. I am so glad you're joining me. Today I'm using this layered stamp set called Rose Garden from Crafty Meraki, and I'm going to stamp just a couple of flowers and leaves from this stamp set just to show you how you stamp them. And I've gone ahead and chosen four coordinating colors for the flower, and you can see that these flowers are packaged in a way that you know exactly which layer comes after which, and they also are numbered, so A1, A2, A3, A4 are one flower, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to stamp the one that was on the top that I showed you, and I'm going to start off with the solid one here, and of course I'm going to stamp the solid one with the lightest color. Usually when you stamp it once, this light color doesn't show very well, so I'm just going to stamp that two more times so I have a very crisp solid color. Here I'm using like spreading knife. I don't know what you call this, I'm not able to remember it. I just used that to remove the stamp from my MISTI so that it helps me, especially when I have nails. It is just an easier thing. Then I'm taking the second layer here and I'm showing you that little arrow. That's where each of those, that's my point of reference, that arrow right there. And that curve that you see on that flower is the place where the arrow sits in between that curve. So that is my reference point every time I put the next layer on the flower. So now I'm taking the second color here and I'm going to stamp that. Again, sometimes it can be a little splotchy, so I just kind of go and stamp it once more, and then that should give a nice solid inking on the flower. And then the third layer, again, I'm doing the same thing, looking at my reference point. It always helps to put a little tick mark or some sort to help you know where you are going to, what you're going to look for. Like this, it's nice to have one point to see where you're going to put that layer to stamp. And I'll show you in eventually that the stamp set also comes with a guide, which I'll show you in a bit. And then I'm stamping the third layer. Again, the third layer, that ink is not too it's not very far away from the second ink that I used, so I really needed to stamp that twice for that reason. And then the third one is the deepest layer. And then again, the same thing, making sure I'm placing it exactly where the reference point is. And then I'm going to stamp that using my darkest and the deepest color. In this case, it's grape wine. And you can see how beautiful that flower looks. All of a sudden it has this life that just comes in. I just love layering dyes. They're so beautiful. Now I'm going to stamp this leaf. Again, leaf has 3 layers, but I'm going to skip the solid layer. Like I'm going to show you right here. I'm going to skip that solid layer and I'm going to just stamp using the second and the third layer. And I'm using some gray colors for it. And I'm using Evening Gray and Moon Rock from Altenew. And I'm just going to stamp the second layer with the mid-tone, and then the last layer, the third layer, with a deeper tone. And that's pretty much the color scheme of this card. So basically what I want to show you is how do you create a top heavy card. So basically I'm creating the entire visual effect of the card is going to be on the top side of the card, and in order to do that, I kept the color scheme to very simple, and I added large and like really big flowers and sentiments. You'll see eventually. And here is that guide that I was talking to you earlier about. And then I'm going to take the coordinating die from the same stamp set here, Rose Garden, and I'm just going to die cut. And I had gone ahead and stamped and die cut a couple more off screen, and here you can see all of those. And then what I did is I took this die cut hugs, and I'm going to die cut this using a black cardstock for the hugs, and then the vellum cardstock for the outline or the shadow part of the hugs. And I'm just going to keep that aside, and I'm taking a white wood grain note card. I don't know if you can see here the wood grains. It has just a little bit of grainy texture to it, and it just looks beautiful. And I'm taking this re-inker, black re-inker. You can actually use any black ink you may have, and I'm going to splatter this ink only on the top. Like, I'm keeping the heaviest splatter on the top section of this note card. You can see I'm avoiding coming down. So you can see the down part of that card is not as splattered as the top part. And that's what because as I said earlier, we're making a top heavy note card. And here I'm just going to start playing and oops, I got some ink on that rose there, and I was so annoyed. Initially I thought I could just cover it up with hugs, but it was bugging me, and I said, you know what, forget it, I'm going to use the second part. I had this extra rose, so it worked out fine. Just be careful when you splatter. The ink can sometimes be wet, so just either you heat set it. I did heat set it though, but still I think some part got missed. And then it's all about fidgeting around and playing and figuring out a composition for your flowers. So as I said, I wanted just the top heavy, so the 1/3 of the card to be heavier than the bottom. So you can see the rest of the card is pretty much I wouldn't say 1/3, it's almost half, not even half. I don't know, maybe 1/3. Anyway, just the top half of the card is heavier, and the bottom half is pretty much clean and simple. Like, it's really nothing. So when you make a top heavy card, you want to at least in my opinion, I think keeping a cluster together tight makes it look much more beautiful, because your eye draws to that focal image versus all the empty space on the card. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, I've just gone ahead and adhered that, and here I'm using this stamp set called Floral Hags, and I'm just taking that Miss You stamp, and I've stamped it on a white cardstock with some black ink, and I'm just adding some foam tape behind it, and I'm going to adhere that on top of the hugs. And you can see the color scheme is very simple. I've kept it just with red, grays, and black. And now I'm just taking some red dewdrops. These are not gemstones. I've had this in my stash for a whole long time. I don't even know where it is from, but they're just dewdrops, and I'm just going to scatter them around. And I usually like to place my gemstones where I want them to go, and it's after that I adhere them. I want to mix my gemstones along with some crystals too. So here I've taken some iridescent crystals. I think this is from Pretty Pink Posh, I'm guessing. And I'm just adhering that along with the other dewdrops. And I've taken a top folding note card, and I'm just going to adhere this panel onto that note card with some liquid glue, and that pretty much completed the card. Oh, I just did one more thing after I had done adhering this. I just took a glitter pen here, and I just went over the hugs, just the hugs part of it. I just thought it needed some shimmer. Anyway, and so you can see how you can create a top heavy card just by few elements, and then keeping the cluster tight and together on the top half. I hope you enjoyed this video. Here's a closer look. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Subscribe to our channel, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.